I think it was solved already.
Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary? Welcome back. As thank you for helping us reach over 900,000 subscribers, I hope you enjoy this special new episode while we continue to work on some exciting new projects for something scary. So make sure you subscribe to Snarls and the bell is turned on for notifications. Have you ever had an out-of-body experience or slipped into a very realistic daydream once in a while? 15-year-old Lizanne has, multiple times. But they're more than just daydreams. She believes that someone is trying to take over her body. The earliest incident Lizanne can remember was when she was 8 years old. She was cast in her school's musical about vampires. One of the musical numbers required them to form a pyramid, sort of like what cheerleaders do. Lizanne was on the second to the bottom row. She had never done anything like this before and was incredibly nervous. And then, Lizanne couldn't move. She was paralyzed. Her entire body was frozen in place. She couldn't open her mouth to call for help or wave her hand for someone's attention. Then everything began to fade to black. Lizanne was alone until a young boy appeared in front of her. He had short blonde hair and clean, semi-formal clothes. He held a hand out, motioning for Lizanne to come to him. She had never seen this boy, but felt compelled to go to him. No longer paralyzed, Lizanne stood up and ran towards the little boy, and then found herself back in the auditorium. She crashed onto the ground and rolled off the stage, her fellow cast members following the same fate. High-pitched screams filled the auditorium. Lizanne tried to stand up, but realized very quickly that her arm was broken. "Are you okay? How did this happen?" Lizanne's mom, Melanie, asked as she drove her daughter to the hospital. "I fell during rehearsal," she said, leaving out a very important detail. Lizanne continued to have these strange blackouts and thought it would be best to not let her mother worry, so she kept them to herself. When she was 13, she was waiting at the train station alone. It was a hot day and she had a tendency to get overwhelmed by heat. A train sped by and she was engulfed in a cloud of hot air. She started to feel faint. Then everything around her turned black. She was back in that familiar void. That same blonde boy appeared a few dozen feet in front of her. "What are you doing over there? Get over here. The train's coming, hurry." In a daze, Lizanne began to walk towards the boy until she felt someone grab her from the back. Lizanne snapped back into reality. Just a train whipped past, narrowly missing her nose. "Are you trying to get yourself killed? Pay attention." The summer after that incident, Lizanne and her friends were hanging out at the nearby lake. They were laying out on their towels by the water and joking around. And then her friends said a word that triggered something inside Lizanne. She doesn't remember exactly what her friends said, but she remembers her body just stopped working. She closed her eyes and saw a face with no eyes and no nose. Just a smile, like the Cheshire Cat, but much more evil. She reopened her eyes and found herself in the middle of the lake. Lizanne didn't know how to swim. She started flailing her arms and legs around in a panic, trying to stay above water. Her friend jumped in and was able to pull her safely ashore. After everyone had calmed down, Lizanne turned to her friends. "What just happened?" You started mumbling really weird things, and then you stood up, turned around, and screamed at us, and said that you were going to kill yourself. And then you jumped into the lake. I don't remember any of that. These blackouts were starting to get much more serious. Lizanne had kept these incidences from her mother because she didn't want her to worry, but something very strange was happening, and Lizanne had to know why. "Mom, I have to tell you something." Lizanne began to tell her mom about all the blackouts, and her eyes became wide with terror. Lizanne thought it was because she didn't believe her. They sat in silence for a few moments. Melanie took a deep breath. I was right this whole time. Melanie had sworn that she wouldn't tell her daughter about what happened when she was younger. But after hearing the fear in her daughter's voice, she knew it was time. When Lizanne was small, she was very close with her great-grandfather on her mother's side, which is her Indonesian side. Indonesians believe in the concept of Ru. It is the spirit that continues to exist long after the physical body has gone. It is far beyond human understanding, a very ingrained belief in Indonesia. So Lizanne's great-grandfather told her stories of Ru to help her cope with the fact that he would physically be leaving her soon. And that day came when Lizanne turned 4. Despite the comforting stories her great-grandfather told her, she was still upset and missed him dearly. Melanie began to worry about her daughter's well-being as she noticed that she was more emotionally closed off than before. So every night, she would take a peek inside her room to check on her. Most nights, she'd be muttering gibberish through tears under her breath. But some nights, she wasn't in her bed because she was sleepwalking. There are a few times when Melanie walked into Lizanne's room to find her sitting on the ground, surrounded by her dolls and stuffed animals. She'd be having a full-on conversation with them while her eyes were shut. While it was always a bit of a shock, nothing compared to the time when she found Lizanne standing at her open bedroom window, reaching in front of her, crying,
Grandpa!
Melanie rushed over to her daughter and pulled her from the ledge. Lizanne, what were you doing?
I was going to Grandpa.
While Melanie was incredibly superstitious, Lizanne's father, Ryan, was not. Melanie insisted that they take her to a priest to make sure something otherworldly was not going on. But Ryan shut the idea down. Instead, he took her to a psychiatrist who explained that Lizanne's behavior was completely normal for a young, grieving child. So after that visit, Lizanne's parents agreed to never bring this up again. Without telling Ryan, Melanie took Lizanne to the nearby church. They told the priest what had been going on, and he explained the situation. When Lizanne's great-grandfather died, she became susceptible to spiritual attack. The Ru of a young boy saw this opportunity and attached himself to Lizanne. He waits until she's emotionally vulnerable and tricks her into harming herself. His goal is to have her join him in the spirit world. Can you get rid of him? Melanie begged. I'm sorry, but I cannot. You're too late. What do you mean? You waited too long. He has been attached to your daughter for so long that to get rid of him would mean getting rid of her. I am so sorry. What you think in the comments below. Like this video if it gave you the chills. And don't forget to subscribe to Snarled. We're so close to 1 million subscribers, so if you like our content, tell your friends about us. If you'd like to submit a story to Something Scary Live, send me an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. And don't forget to tune in every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you dare, follow me on social media. Until next time, sweet dreams.
Take it out, da, 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 da,
Before we head into our next story, make sure you're subscribed to Snarled and the bell is turned on for notifications. This next chapter comes from Layla, whose life changed after she took a pocket watch from a haunted shack. Layla had always been somewhat of an outcast at school. Because of her thin frame and gaunt features, kids were afraid of her. There were 4 girls in particular who loved to pick on her: Christina, Emma, Jessica, and Jasmine. They would call her Demon Girl. Freak. She looks like a witch. Careful, she might put a spell on you. When Layla told a teacher about this, The girls cornered her during lunch period and beat her up. Layla and her family had just moved to a new house. Unfortunately, it wasn't far enough for Layla to switch schools. But the move did excite her because there was a creepy graveyard nearby, and rumor had it that there was a black wooden hut where a witch lived. So one night, she decided to visit the hut alone. Led by nothing more than the light from her cell phone, she walked down the rocky path in the graveyard and stood before the small, cobweb-covered hut. There were no lights or sounds coming from inside. Layla reached for the door and pushed it open. Everything was covered in spiderwebs and dust. It looked like no one had stepped foot in there for decades. Layla walked around inside the small dark shack in fascination, but couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't completely alone. Then something caught her eye. On the table was a pocket watch. It was the only thing in the shack that wasn't completely covered in dust. It didn't look like it worked anymore, though. It only had one hand, which pointed at 12. Still, Layla thought it was beautiful and interesting, so she put it in her pocket and went back home. The next morning, Layla got ready for school like every other day. But when she went downstairs to eat breakfast, her mom shot her a confused look. "Did you dye your hair?" "No." "Well, something's different." Layla ignored her mom's comment and ate her breakfast. When she went to the bathroom after her meal, she caught her reflection. Her mom was right. Her hair was darker. Her hair used to be a light brown, but now it was almost black. And over the next month, her hair got even darker and her skin even paler. Her eyes were almost black as well. And then came the shadow. Every now and then in the corner of her eye, Layla would see someone watching her, but when she turned to look at it, it'd be gone. And every night she would dream that she was watching herself sleep, like she was watching from someone else's point of view. One day at school, Layla was trying to get to her classroom without one of her bullies noticing, but failed. Christina headed straight for her and immediately began throwing rude words in her face and shoving her. As Christina walked away to her next class, Layla muttered under her breath, "I wish she would be out of my life forever." She pulled out the pocket watch and rubbed the engravings. Looking at the watch always made her feel calmer. Layla was both relieved and surprised when none of the girls came near her the rest of the day. The next day, Christina didn't show up to school. Rumor had it that her parents had last minute decided to move back to Shanghai. What an amazing coincidence, Layla thought. She pulled out her pocket watch and noticed something odd. The cover was flipped open, and the hand was now pointing at 1. The next day, Jessica was in a terrible car crash on her way to school and ended up in a coma. Then Jasmine had gone missing. These girls had always given Layla trouble, but she never wished this on them. She threw the pocket watch in the trash, but it just reappeared in her pocket. Eventually, anyone who had ever given Layla a hard time had something unpleasant happen to them. Hands now pointed at 11. "You're a demon, Layla. I don't know what you're doing, but it needs to stop. Do you understand? I have put up with you and your awful friends for years, and you dare to ask mercy of me? I wish you were dead." The next day, Emma was found in the woods near her home. She was devoured by a pack of wolves. When Layla heard the news, she knew things had gone way too far. She had to destroy that pocket watch. That night, she went back to the graveyard near her house to the hut. She threw the watch back on the table and ran back home. And the very next day, Jessica awoke from her coma. Jasmine had been found and reunited with her family. Even Layla's hair and skin were returning to their original colors. The curse was broken, and things were back the way they were. Well, maybe not quite. Everyone at school was talking about how Layla somehow put a curse on those who wronged her, and no one dared mess with her again. A very special thank you to Layla for sharing